actually starting at the top of the page. For all those of you counting down to the time Rabbi Silver is coming back, I can assure you, do not build your egel yet. He will be back shortly. So just bear with us. I'll fill in a few more days.
You're doing great.
Thank you. So starting at the top from the Mishnah at the top. So the Mishnah says, Pigel bekometz velo belavona. We know that part of the process of the carbon mincha, general carbon mincha, is that there's a kometz. The Kohen separates out a kimitza as well, and there's a process of burning the kimitza as well as the levona, the spices on the mizbeach. So the Mishnah is discussing a case where he had pigel intent to either burn it. Let's assume it's talking about burning it outside the proper time. So he has pigel intent during the kometz procedure while he's burning the Rashi actually points out specifically pigel bekometz. Rashi says the third line in Rashi behaktaras kometz, while he is burning the kometz chishev ala shirayim. So what's his intent? His intent is that when the kometz is matir, permits the eating of the leftovers. So while he's offering up the kometz on the mizbeach, he has a pigel intent to eat the shirayim, which generally we would be allowed to eat later on. He has an intent to eat those, let's say, in the wrong place or at the wrong time. So the question is, if he has pigel intent during the kometz, one of the processes of the mincha, velo belavona, however, not during the process of burning the levona, the spices. Bilavona, velo bekometz. Or similarly, if he has intent to he has a pigel intent during the process of levona, but not again during the process of the kometz. Rameir omer pigel. Rameir says that is pigel. V'chayavan alav kares. And the general halacha is, if something is pigel, if you were to eat it, it carries with it a kares penalty. Fine. V'chachamim omrim. However, the chachamim argue on Rameir and they say, ein bo kares ad sheyifage b'chol hamatir. The chachamim say no. It is not a case of it is not the capital case of the Torah case of pigel. Why? Because in order to have the general case of pigel, which carries with it the penalty of kares, you need to have a pigel intent through all of the matirim, through all of the permitted acts of that carbon. So here you only had it during one of the acts. You either had it only during the kometz or only during the levona. So therefore, the Chachamim argue on Rameir and say it does not carry with it kares. However, fine. The Chachamim do, however, hold that it's midrabanan and pasal. Okay, we'll see that in the Gemara a little bit later on. Umodim Chachamim Rameir. The Chachamim, however, agree to Rameir in the following scenario: b'minchas chote, in a mincha that is brought by a chote, a person who it does not have the requisite funds to purchase either an animal offering for his carbon chatas or a bird offering for his carbon chatas, and he has to bring a carbon mincha. So that mincha only does not have all of the general mincha services. It doesn't have to carry with it levona. Uve minchas kinos, and the offering brought by the husband of a woman who was suspected of being a sota. So both those karbanos only have the kometz. They don't have levona with them. So the Chachamim will agree in that case, she'em pigel bekometz, that if a person does have pigel intent only with the kometz, shehu pigel, that is a deoraisa case of pigel, v'chayavim olav kares, and it will carry with it the penalty of kares, again because there is only one mater, there's only one permitted process with that mincha. The process is only the kometz. There's no levona with those menachos. Why? Shehakometz hu mater, because the kometz in that case is the mater. There is no other mater. There is no other permitted activity. Shachat echad min hakvasim. Another case the Mishnah brings up: if there were two breads brought to be mater. There were. Oh, one second. Let me just quote the Rashi for a second. There were two breads brought on Shavuos to be mater the new grain. Those breads were preceded by two karbanos, two kvasim. If the kvasim, once the kvasim were offered, then that was mater. You were then allowed to eat those two breads, the shtei alechem. So shachat echad min hakvasim. If a person were to go ahead and shecht not both of the kvasim, but only one of the kvasim, le'echol beis chalos amachar, with the intent to eat both of the chalos, the following day, which again is the improper time. They're supposed to be eaten on that day. He had intent, essentially a pigul intent, to eat those chalas on the following day. Or a similar case, hikter echad min bazichin. We know that there were 2 different spoonfuls of bazichin, of frankincense that were, or of spices that were sat on top of the shulchan, and those spices were again the matir, the permitter of the kohanim being allowed to eat the lechem upon him. So again, instead of taking both, doing essentially the kemitza of those bazichin, he takes one of them, or he offers up actually only one of them. He burns one of the bazichin. Lechol beis sedarim, to eat both groups of loaves of shtei halechem. They were arranged in two sets, so to eat both of them. Rameir Omer, again, Rameir, it says a parallel machlokas. Rameir Omer pigol. Rameir says both those cases are considered to be cases of pigol. V'chayav malav kares, and it's a regular case of pigol, and you're chayav kares. V'chacham Omer, Chacham argue, ein bo kares ad sheyifaga b'chol amater. Again, the Chacham state their view that because your pigol intent is only during part of the process, part of the permitting process, you only for one carbon, only for one spoonful, but one of the bazichin. So therefore, they hold the karis is not the pigul is not the highest form of pigul. It'll only be aser midarab. It'll only be puzzle. Let's say that you wouldn't be allowed to eat it. You wouldn't be allowed to eat the either the lechem apanim or the shtei halechem, but it does not carry with it the deoraisa karis. Okay. Shachat echad another case, the Mishnah says, Shachat echad min hakvasim lechol mimenu lemachar. So if a person shechted one of the kvasim, again, this is talking about the case of the shtei halechem, so he shechted one of the kvasim, one of the animals, one of the sheep, lechol mimenu lemachar, with the intent to eat that sheep tomorrow, hu pigul, that animal becomes pigul, v'chaveru kasher, and the second animal it does not affect the second animal. However, if his intent on the first carbon was not to eat the first carbon tomorrow, but his intent on the first carbon was, while he was shechting the first carbon, he intended to eat the second carbon tomorrow, that is not an effective case of pigul either. We've learned that before, that you can't affect it on from one thing to the next. So therefore, both of the karbanos, it's not effective for intent, and therefore both of the karbanos are kosher. Okay. Look, starting from the Gemara now. Amar Rav. So Rav qualifies the machlokas. The Gemara is going to discuss in pretty great detail the machlokas between Rameir and the Chachamim. Try to apply it to different cases. So we'll see how exactly the Gemara does that. But the Gemara starts out now. Amar Rav. Rav says machlokas shenasan esakometz b'shtika. The machlokas between whom? The machlokas between Rameir and the Chachamim in the Mishnah. Rameir stating that if you have intent for part of the matir, it's still considered to be a good pigul intent. The Chacham is saying you need it throughout the entire matir, throughout all of the permitting processes. So that whole machlokas is shenasan et sakometz b'shtika, where a person brought the kometz to the mizbeach b'shtika he didn't express any intent, he didn't have any machshava, any thought of pigul. V'es halavona b'machshava. And when he burned the levona, the spices on the mizbeach, he had an intent of pigul. Aval nasan hakometz, meaning his pigul intent was during the second permitting process. He didn't have any das during any thought during the first process, but during the second process he does have a pigul intent. Aval nasan hakometz b'machshava. However, if during the first permitting process he has a machshava of pigul, he has a thought, I want to bring this up, I'm going to eat this during the wrong time or in the wrong place. Ves halavona bishtika, and during the second permitting process, he is silent. Divrei hakol pigul. Everyone will agree, even the chachamim will agree, in that case, it is considered to be a deoraisa case of pigul. You will be chayiv karis. Why? Shakol ha'oseh al da'as rishona hu oseh. Because we presume that anyone who is following through a process or processes, right, and initially has an intent, we extend that intent through the final process as well. So if his initial intent was a pigul intent, even though during the second process, the second matir, permitting process, he doesn't express any intent, he's silent. Obviously, if he expresses intent that he doesn't want it to become pigul, this is not going to be true. But this is talking about a case where he expressed an intent during the first permitting process, no expression during the second process. We extend that. Even the Chachamim will agree. It's like an inertia, theory. It extends through the second process. That is the shita of Rav. Ushmuel Amar, and Shmuel argues on Rav and says, no, Adayan hu machlokas, that that Rameir and the Chachamim will still argue, will not agree, will still argue, even in a case where you had pigul intent during a first process, you were silent during a second process, the Chachamim will still argue and say that is not considered to be a deoraisa form of pigul, because you did not have a pigul intent throughout both processes. There's a very interesting footnote, if you look in the art scroll on this, how exactly to understand what the shita of the Rabbanan is according to Shmuel. The general reading. Yeah, he quotes I'll just read it to you quickly over here for a second. On Mem Aleph Amud Beis in Zvachim. So the Gemara quotes a similar. The Gemara quotes this Mishnah. I'll just read it to you quickly. It says over there, Amr B'Shim ben Lakish, Lo Tema Tami Derab Meir. You don't have it. I mean, unless you have a regular Gemara, you're not going to have it in your Gemara. So Lo Tema Tami Derab. Don't think that the reason for Rameir is the Kasavar. Rameir holds Mifaglim B'Chatzi Matir. That Rameir holds that you can have pigol during half of a matir. That's the reason for Rameir. What's the case over here? The case over here, like our Gemara says, is talking about a case where you first place the komets with intent during the first part of the matir, and during the second process you're silent. So kasavar Rameir holds kol osa das rishon hu osa. Like the Gemara says over here, Rameir holds, or the shita over here holds, that Rameir holds kol osa das rishon hu osa. Now it would seem that the Chachamim hold that we don't say kol os, meaning from Rav Shmuel it would seem that the machlokas between Rameir and the Chachamim is one holds we do extend your intent, and the Chachamim argue and say we don't extend your intent. Right? That's according to Shmuel at least. That's how we would understand the machlokas. That they still argue in that case. So obviously one holds we are going to extend it, and the other holds you don't extend it. So Rashi over here explains, and I think this is quoted from the Brisker Rav. The Brisker Rav wants to explain that the Chachamim really agree that we hold you generally would extend a person's intent from the initial act to the second act. He quotes Rashi over here. I'll just read it quickly. Rashi says, "V'Rabbanan Savri." This is in Zvachim, so we don't have it over here. "V'Rabbanan Savri al das rishona lo amrinan." We don't say al das rishona unless ela imkein amar af b'sheni, unless a person expressly states it in the second part of what he's doing. V'chol machshava the kach motzi b'pehu. Fine. So according to Chachamim, unless a person expressly, we would require that a person were to expressly, specifically by kachim. We know that kachim, generally things have to be done expressly. So because things need to be done expressly, a person would have to discreetly describe that in the second act he wants it to continue, and it's a little bit different than the general halachos of extending one person's thought process to a second process. Again, I just found that to be something interesting. Okay, let's continue in the Gemara over here. So Yosef Rava, a little bit above the middle of the page, Yosef Rava, the Ka'amar Lala Hashmaitza. So Rava was found stating the halacha of Rav. He was explaining it in the Beis Medrash, and the following question was asked on the shita of Rav. Esvei Rav Acha bar Rav Huna l'Rava. So Rav Acha bar Huna asked the following question to Rava on Rav's shita. Rav Shita again says that there is no machlokas between Rameir and the Chachamim in a case where there was intent during the first process. So the Gemara is going to bring a question from a case. Bamedvar Mamurim. I'm just going to read out Rashi here because we're going to have a bunch of times when the Gemara just starts out in the middle of an idea. So I just want to backtrack a little bit and see what it's talking about, the Brisa. Rashi says towards the top, maybe 10 lines down. When do we say that a machshava for the komets is mifagel, does rise to a pigul intent? B'kmitza uvamatan kli uvehiluch. There are multiple processes. Again, we know with the mincha offering, there's a kmitza taken off, right? They take the handful, it's then put into a klisharis, a designated vessel. It's then brought over to the mizbeach. all of those processes are avodos. So, Bamed Varamurim, when do we say it's considered to be pigul intent, b'kemitza v'matan kliya v'hiluch? During any of those three processes, the actual kemitza, the Kohen taking the handful, v'matan kliya, placing it in the kli, uvehiluch, and while transporting it to the mizbeach. Avobalo lahaktara. But when the Kohen comes to actually burn the kemitza on the mizbeach, bolo lahaktara. Nasa nesa kometz. However, when the Kohen is coming, meaning during the haktara process, you'll see what the question is in a minute. Nasa nesa kometz b'shtika v'esalvonu machshava, like we talked about previously. If he were to place the kometz silently, the first permitting act, where he would place it silently on the mizbeach, v'esalvonu machshava, and have again the pigul intent during the second process, or esakometz v'machshava v'esalavona b'shtika, or conversely, place the kometz, the first permitting act, b'machshava, with the pigul intent, v'esalavona, and the second permitting act silently, without any expressed intent. Rameir omer pigul v'chayav olav kares. Rameir says his halacha of pigul, that it's a regular case of pigul and your chayav kares. And the chachamim argue ostensibly in both of these cases, and these are both cases that one of the cases that Rameir said there is a machlokas, and one of these cases is a case where Rameir said even the chacham will agree, the case where he had in pigul intent during the first step, but not during the second step. So we see that the chacham argue in both cases, like Shmuel essentially. So Katani Miyas, the Gemara now restates its question. We learn nevertheless in this brisa, Nasa and Esakometz Machshava, the case of placing the kometz with a pigul intent, Vesalavona b'shtika, and the second permitting act without any expressed intent. You see that the Chachamim uplige, and you see that the Chachamim argue in that case. So that's not like the shita of Rav. So Ema, this is an emendation, or not an emendation, but there's something, we're speaking out part of the brisa that wasn't expressed, when it says that Nasa Nesa Kometz Machshava Vesa Lavona B'Shtika, that he placed the kometz with pigul intent and the Lavona silently, it means he had already placed the Lavona silently. So it essentially flips around the case. It's not talking about a case where your pigul was during the first permitting act. It's saying, it's unstated. When it says that you placed the Lavona B'Shtika, it means you are, really the way to read it is, you placed the Lavona B'Shtika, and then you placed the kometz b'machshava. So it's essentially stating both cases, where either you did the Lavona first b'machshava with the pigul intent, or you did kometz first with the pigul intent. So Gemara is going to ask. Fine. The Gemara says, Shtei tshuvas b'davar. I have two problems with that answer. Chada, dahainu kamaisa. Firstly, it's essentially stating the case, the same halacha twice. It's just stating it. One is saying where you did the kometz. It doesn't really matter what order. I'm sorry, I didn't speak this out earlier. It doesn't really matter what order you do the kometz or lavona first. You can do the kometz first. You can do the lavona first. They both have to be brought and burned on the mizbeach. So it's essentially the brisa is saying that if you burn the kometz first and you have machshava of pigul. I'm sorry, if you burn the kometz first and you're quiet, and then you burn the lavona with the pigul intent, there's a machlokas. If you burn the kometz, I don't remember which case I said, but the other case, if you burn the lavona first and you're silent, and then you burn the kometz and you have a machshav intent, so that's also machlokas. Those are the same halachos. Why would we state both halachos if that's true that's the case of brisa? Va'od Hatanya achakach. We learned in a brisa that the wording of the brisa was not that nasa nasa kometz machshava v'esel lavona b'shtika. The brisa actually, there's another brisa that actually puts in the words the achakach nasa nasa lavona b'shtika, and afterwards you place the lavona b'shtika. So our answer doesn't work anymore. You can no longer say that when it says esel lavona b'shtika, it means you already placed the lavona. So that does not answer our question. So we have a brisa essentially that's saying that the machlokas between Rameir and the Chachamim is in both cases a case where you were initially silent and had a pigul intent at the second permitting act, or if you had your pigul intent during the first permitting act. Still, the Chachamim say that we do not extend your pigul machshava to the second permitting act. So it's a question essentially on Rav. So the Gemara Rav Chanina. The Gemara answers, Rav Chanina gives the following answer. The Beis The Beis Deos. It's talking about where there are two different Kohanim doing the service. So essentially what happens is that the service itself is split between two Kohanim. So the Chachamim will argue in that case, even though the Chachamim might agree. So let's just see Rashi. For a second, Rashi is almost right across, maybe one line up. B'shtei Deos. Sheme's Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Gadol either died, or Irabo Keri, or some psul, the psul of Keri occurred, La'achar Hazos, the Bein Habadim, B'shimesh Achar Tachta. So after his initial service, he died, or he became pasul. B'shimesh Achar Tachta, and another Kohen jumped in his stead. B'hiza B'heichal, and then he did the following service in the Heichal, instead. The lekal meimer al das rishonhu also. You can no longer extend so meaning the Brisa still reads, the Chacham will still argue in this case, and the reason Chacham will argue in this case is even though generally Chacham might say, we'll extend your das from the first permitting act to the second permitting act, if they're being done by two distinct people, we can no longer say that anymore. We can't extend from one person to the next person. There's something glaring in front of us that's obvious, meaning we cannot follow through the act from one person to the next. So that's why the Chachamim would argue in that case, specifically in this brisa. This brisa is no longer a question on Rav. Okay, that's the first brisa that Gemara disproves. So Gemara is going to try now another brisa and ask a question on Rav from another brisa. Tashma. Come in here, the following brisa. Now I'm going to read Rashi again because... well, let me just see if it's here. No, 1 second. No, okay. When is this halacha true? Yeah. So again, it's talking about basically the halacha that we're talking about. That when you have pigal intent for one part of the matir, is it considered to be is everything considered to be pigal? So when is the pigal intent effective to make it pigal? Only specifically with blood applications that are occurring on the outer mizbeach. But blood applications that are occurring on the inner mizbeach, okay? Kigon, what blood applications are occurring? General karbanos are being applied on the outer mizbeach. However, there are certain karbanos that are applied on the inner mizbeach. Kigon, for example, mem gimel shel yom kippurim. There are 43 blood applications on Yom Kippur. Va'achas esrei, and 11 blood applications for a par kohen mashuach, for a anointed kohen. Ve'achas esrei, and also 11 blood applications of a par helam davar shel tzibor, for when all of the congregation erroneously follows a psak of bezin and does some sort of violates some sort of biblical prohibition. So that all of those three cases, there are blood applications on the inner mizbeach, among other blood applications, but the blood applications are being applied to the inner mizbeach. So the brisa continues, pigel, if a person has so there are basically multiple blood applications for all of these karbanos. So pigel, in those cases, pigel bein barishona, bein b'shniya, bein b'shlishis, if a person has a pigel intent, and I'm going to just describe the case of the Kohen on Yom Kippur. So the Kohen on Yom Kippur applied it inside the Kodesh HaKodashim, on the Parochas, and then he went, and a third time, it's either 3 or 4, but essentially what he did was he then applied it on the inner Mizbeach, on the corners, and then he sprinkled it onto the Mizbeach. So the Gemara will either refer to that as 3, both on the inner Mizbeach will either refer to that as 3 and 4, or just 3. The Gemara here is just calling it 3, but at any rate, if a person has a pigul intent during any of those processes of sprinkling the blood, the Rishona inside the Kodesh HaKodashim, B'shniya outside in the Heichal onto the Paroches, B'shbein B'shlishis, or the third time on the Mizbeach HaPnimi, Rameir says, Pigol v'chayam u'lavkar. So Rameir says, and all of those processes are essentially matir, right? All of those processes are essential avodos and are going to be matir something. So Rameir says, even though your pigul intent was only for one of those processes, one of the blood applications. So Rameir says pigel v'chayim lo karis. Rameir says his shita that's considered to be pigel. You would be chayiv karis. So Chum omrim ein bo karis achi yifaga b'chol matar. Chum argue and say no, it's not going to be karis until your pigel intent was throughout all of the processes. Again, very similar. Katani miyas. Now, so what's the question? Let's see what the question is. Katani miyah pigel bein barishona bein b'shniya bein b'shlishis. So we're stating here that whether a person's intent is during the first process, during the second process, or during the third process, the Chachamim will argue. Now, according to Rav, if your pigel intent was during the first process, we should extend that throughout all the processes, according to the Chachamim, and they should agree in that case. The Brisa is stating that they argue in essentially all cases. So how does this Brisa work according to Rav? So Vichitema, the Gemara asks, and perhaps you'll answer like we said before, Bishtei Deos, that there are multiple Kohanim offering here. Something happened to the Kohen during the first sprinkling and the second sprinkling, so that essentially interrupts. Let's say we're talking about he had a pigel intent during the first sprinkling, set of sprinkles. So the fact that you switch now to a second Kohen interrupts and does not allow us, so even according to the Chachamim, to extend to the second set. So maybe that's that same answer that we said before. The Gemara says that doesn't work. Well, it's not a universal opinion. Hani chalamanda amar bepar. That is only good according to the Manda Amar who darshans the pasuk bepar va'afilu b'damel shapar. That the Kohen can be mechaper with his par, and even just with the blood of the par. Ella, and I'm going to explain this in a second. Ella lamanda amar. Well, let's see Rashi for a second. If you go over Rashi, maybe also like 12 lines up or something. Vafilu damel shapar shenemar bizos yavo Aaron el kodesh. Right, the pasuk says, and with this Aaron should enter into the kodesh hakadashim. Bipar, he should go with the par. Now, there's an opinion that holds the darshans bipar with his sacrifice. Vafilu b'damel shapar, and even if he's entering only with the blood of his offering, what does that mean? Shem shachta harishon. If another Kohen shachted it, v'ira b'psul, and something happened to it. I'm continuing in Rashi. Yahavo Aaron b'damel shel hekdesh. Aaron can come only with essentially the blood. So essentially, what that according to that Manda Amar holds, that we find that even during the services of Yom Kippur, or certainly with this par, once the Kohen starts the process, the following Kohen that takes his place is allowed to continue utilizing that blood. That's one opinion. However, the Gemara says, back to the Gemara says there's another opinion. Lamanda Amar Hanich Lamanda Amar Bapar Vafilu Damashapar. Elamanda Amar Bapar Veloba Damashapar. According to the Manda Amar holds that you cannot use that blood. The Kohen will have to start over the entire process, shecht both of the karbanos again, use new blood, so that doesn't work anymore. There will never be a scenario in which you'll be switching Kohanim and switching every Kohen is going to do an entire process on his own. So that answer does not hold true according to that opinion, and therefore would not be an effective answer to explain Rav according to essentially every shita. So according to that, or what would you say? So Rava gives the following answer. Second to last skinny line on the page. Barishona. Rava says it's talking about a case where he had pigul intent during the first application, first series, a shasak b'shniya, and he was silent during the second series, upiga b'shlishis, and he had again a pigul intent during the third process. Why? Damrina. We'll analyze the case as follows. If we were to assume that the person wanted essentially to extend his intent from the first act through the third act, the third series, mihadar piguli b'shlishis lamali. Why did he express his intent by the third one? He didn't need to. We could have extended. The fact that he's expressing his intent by the third seems to indicate that on the second one he did not want to have a pigul intent, and therefore his pigul intent does not extend throughout all of the matirim according to the Chachamim, and they will argue in that case. So that's one suggested answer. So Masiv Rav Ashi, Rav Ashi asks a question that maybe some of you are thinking. Mide shasek katani. It doesn't say that he was. First of all, the Brisa doesn't say that he was silent. El Amar Rav Ashi says hachamai skinan kigon shik pigel b'rishona b'shniya. And Tosfos explains that it would have been necessary. I mean, if the Brisa meant that, it would have been necessary to express that specifically. If the Brisa meant that he was silent during the second, and then further stated his intent during the third, but this Rav Ashi can understand that. He says, "Kagon shepigel b'rishona b'shniya." He had pigul intent during the first and second applications. Uvashlishis, not uvashlishis. Kagon shepigel b'rishona b'shniya. And Rashi, if you look at the last Rashi, they take out this word of Bishlishis, Bishasak Bishlishis. And he was silent during the third application. Dakati hu chatzi mater. His pigul intent was nevertheless only through part of the permitting act. Damrinan, we'll say the following. Again, if his intent was to extend throughout all three, why did he need to express his intent during the second application? Obviously, the fact that he did it during the first and second application meant that he only wanted to have his pigul intent for the first and second, and not for the third. And therefore, according to the Chachamim, it's again, you do not have pigul intent throughout all of the matirim. We cannot just extend it because the person obviously expressed that he didn't want to extend it, and therefore they'll argue in that case. Now, the Gemara asks the question, V'ha bein katani. Still, the Brisa said, bein b'rishona, bein b'shniya, bein b'shlisha. So according to the way Rav Ashi is understanding it, the Brisa reads, he had pigul intent during the first and second, or he had pigul intent during the third. In all those cases, there's a machlokas between Rameir and the Chachamim. The Brisa says that the machlokas is in the case of whether it was during the first, or during the second, or during the third. So Gemara says, you know what, that is a question, and we do not feel like we have sufficiently resolved that Brisa. You could obviously rely. It's not the best answer. You can rely on the answer of Rav Ashi, but it's nevertheless not a great answer. The Gemara is not happy with its answer. Not tiyufta, but it's definitely it's a question. Okay. Amar Mar. All right. Rameir Omer. Pigol v'chayamol of kares. So Gemara now is going to analyze the shita of Rameir. So Rameir says, if a person had pigul intent during, let's say, the haktara process, so it's pigol v'chayamol of kares. So Gemara says it's pigol and you're chayiv kares. Michti kares lo mechayiv. So Gemara asks the question: you're not chayiv kares achi yikruvu kol hamatirim, until you offer up all of the permitting, meaning even if your intent of pigul was during one of the permitting processes, a person has to follow through with the entire avoda, and then pigul can kick in essentially. So even though pigul can happen during one process, all of those processes then have to be followed through. The carbon has to essentially, for all other intents and purposes, be valid, and then we can say that you cannot eat it because of pigul. But if a person were to stop in the middle, the pigul would not be effective, even though the pigul was even though he had proper pigul intent. But if the carbon is not essentially carried out in the proper way, then the pigul intent is meaningless. So the Gemara says, Rameir says, if a person has a pigul intent during part of the process, his pigul v'chayvel of kares michli kares lo mechayiv achi yikruvu kol hamatir. Kares, a person that chayiv kares until you bring you follow through with all of the permitting activities of the carbon. To Amar Mar, because we learned. The pasuk says Yerotzeh. One second. Yeah, so the Gemara says, Yerotzeh, that the carbon should be a fitting. Kehartzas kosher, kachartzas pasel. Just like a kosher animal, the fitness of a kosher animal, so also the fitness of a pasel. In order to make something pasel, it has to follow the same structure. Mahartzas kosher achirika v'kol matim. Just like when you come to permit a kosher animal, you have to follow through obviously with all of the permitting processes in order for it to be considered to be a kosher animal. Afartzas pasel. So too, if a carbon is going to become pasel, all of the processes, all the permitting processes need to be followed through, and then we can say essentially it is fitting now to be pasel. V'hai, and this carbon, kevin the chishiv ba b'fnim pasle. So once the person had pigul intent, during the first, now let's assume we're talking about a case. So we're going back to the case of Yom Kippur. So there was Pnim, there's a Fnai and Pnim where he does the first set in the Kodesh HaGadashim. He does the second set on the Heichal, and then he does another set on the Mizbeach. So once a person has intent during that first process of Pigul, so once he has the Pigul intent during the Pnim process, during inside the Kodesh HaKadashim, so possibly the carbon becomes pasul. So Kimadi Behechal, when he then continues the processes in the Heichal and does another process in the Heichal, so he's no longer doing service he's not doing service of this carbon anymore. The carbon essentially has halted at that moment. So his services can no longer continue. So there are no more permitting processes that are happening to this carbon anymore. Rashi explains why we don't say this in general. Why is this not always the case with Pigul? As soon as you have a Pigul intent, so everything should halt. Rashi, you'll look at Rashi a little bit later. If I had more time, I would explain it. But essentially over here, what's happening? Why there are no further permitting processes. So this whole carbon is not going to be offered in the proper way, and the Pigul will not be able to be effective because the Pigul is not followed by a proper carbon anymore. Essentially, all the other processes are just essentially sprinkled. The Gemara says it's like sprinkling water. He's not doing anything anymore. He's not doing the service of this carbon anymore. Given the chishuba b'fnim pasla, he passes the carbon. Kimadi behechal, when a person continues to sprinkle in the hechal, mai ba'am hu madi. He essentially is sprinkling water. So Amar Rabba, Rabba says, what's the case? Mishkachas la ba'arba'a parim uva'arba'a seirim. So Rabba says, we're talking about a case where a person was offering up 4 parim and 4 seirim. What's the case? Rashi will explain. If you look across in Rashi, a couple lines up, right across in the Gemara, B'dalet parim b'dalet seirim, parvisar pnim. So the animals. So the Kohen brings two different types of karbanos. He brings a bull and a seir and a ram. So v'chishev alav. So he has pigul intent initially. V'nishbach adam, and then what happens? The blood spills out. La'achar hazos pnim, after he sprinkles inside of the Kodesh HaKadashim. Ve'bi parvisar acher leichal, and he brings another parvisar, another animal into the heichal. Ve'acher lemizbeach l'sheva azos, and another set of karbanos for the sprinkling of mizbeach. V'chein lekarnos, and he brings yet a fourth set. This is where the Gemara talks now about there being 4 different processes. Before we talked about there being 3 different processes. He's splitting up the 2 different ones on the inner mizbeach, but he essentially brings 4 different sets of animals. The bechol echad karvu matirin. In meaning each act of sprinkling becomes now a discrete act of sprinkling. It doesn't continue anymore. Meaning we have 3 or 4 different sets of sprinkling, because at each point the Kohen something's happening to the blood and it's not continuing further. So that blood is matir only in that process. So in the first process there was 1 par and sar and sar. In the second process there was a second par and sar. Third process there was a third par and sar. So those become discrete avodos, and therefore it's not considered to be. We could no longer say about it that you haven't done the other aspects of the carbon being matir. You haven't done the other parts that it need to be done because there are no parts anymore. That blood spill. That's the Gemara's answer. So Rava gives us another answer. Afilu temo, Rava says you can even say par echad v'sar echad. That it's really talking about still 1 par and 1 sar. That there are going to be 4 different series of blood applications for the 1 par and the 1 sar. Lefagule miratz. So 1 second. Yeah, I'm right. So Gemara says Rav says that you can say that we're talking about one par and 1 sa'ir, and what does it mean? How the problem is that we brought a drasha that says that the carbon, in order to become effect pigul, in order to become pasul, has to be miratza. It has to have some sort of effectiveness. So because the carbon is not ultimately going to be kosher because you're not going to be able to do the other processes, how is this carbon effective? So Gemara says you will continue through the other processes. And how will this carbon be effective? It will be effective in the sense that it will create pigul for the carbon, and therefore will be in line with that drasha in the pasuk. So that's Rava's answer. So Gemara now is just asking a technical question. Arba'im v'shalosh, you said there's 43 applications. Vatanya arba'im v'sheva, there's 47 applications. So Gemara says, Lo kasha, that's not a question. Hakamanda amr v'avrim l'kranos, there's a machlokas whether or not you mix the bloods before or after you sprinkle them on the corners of the mizbeach. V'ha kamanda amr ima arvin, and the brisa that says that there are 47 blood applications holds that you do not mix the blood before you sprinkle them on the corners. Gemara asks, Vatanya arba'im mishmona, but we have another brisa that says that there are 48. There's yet another blood application. So Gemara says, Lokasha, that's not a question, because where does the additional blood application? There's a one mandarmer that holds that shirayim, pouring the leftover blood into the base of the mizbeach is necessary. And the brisa that calls it 47 holds that you don't have to pour it into base, so that's not going to be added into our count. Okay, continues the Gemara, third to last skinny line. Ibailahu piga be'holacha. If the Kohen had pigul intent during the holacha, during the bringing of the blood to the mizbeach, during that process. Before we were talking about he had pigul intent during the offering of the blood. Here now we're talking about having pigul intent during the bringing of the blood. So piga be'holacha, mahu. What's the halacha? Amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha k'mitza. So this is a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says halacha is just like the k'mitza. Rish Lakish amar halacha k'aktara. And Rish Lakish says that bringing it close to the mizbeach is just like haktara. And haktara, you'll have the machlok. Haktara we saw before, you had a machlokas between whom? Between Rav Meir and the Chachamim. And by k'mitza is only done by what? Let's say we have the levona and the solas, the flour. So the k'mitza is only done by what? It's not done by the levona. So anything that's only done by, anything that's specifically done by just the solas. So read Rashi here. Let me just read Rashi here for a second. Rashi is basically right in the middle of the page. K'mitza. So Chacham hold this like k'mitza. Dahavi avoda shlema. So k'mitza, there is no additional k'mitza that's happening. Meaning, according to the Chachamim, obviously we said before, if a person has pigul intent during part of a process, that's not enough. You have to have pigul intent during all the process. K'mitza is only being done once. It's not happening again by the levona. So if a person has k'mitza intent, pigul intent during k'mitza, that is the entire permitting process, and therefore the ein k'mitza b'levona, Rashi explains, there's no k'mitza by levona. So therefore, there's not going to be a machlokas in that case. The Chacham and Rav Meir both agree that you're going to have pigul. However, if it's like haktara, if it's like the burning, both the k'mitza and the levona are going to be burned, and if a person only has intent for either the k'mitza or the levona, depending on how that case is structured, according to the Chachamim, you haven't had it during both processes. It's going to happen by both. And if you only have it by one, there's going to be the machlokas in that case as well. So the question is there machlokas in the case of halacha? Basically the question is there machlokas in the case of halacha? Is essentially halacha happening by both? Is halacha happening or necessary, essential by the k'mitza as well as by the levona? So let's find out in a second. So Bishlam el Rish Lakish, we understand according to Rish Lakish that says it's like halacha is like aktara. Ikanami holacha bilavona. We know that there was a process of holacha, of bringing the levona to the mizbeach. So because it's by the levona as well, if a person only has pigul intent during the k'mitza for holacha, during the flour, let's say, right, which requires halacha, but not during the levona, which requires halacha, so then there's going to be a machlokas because it's only part of the permitting service. Elul Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, my time. What's the reason for Rabbi Yochanan's halacha? There is halacha. There is halacha by both. So Amarava Kasar Rabbi Yochanan kol avoda she'ena materes avoda chashuva. So any avoda that is not an essential matir. Halacha, we've said this a number of times. Halacha is not essential. Why? Because you can avoid doing holacha. You can either pass it from hand to hand, from one coin to the other, and get it to the mizbeach. According to most opinions, that would be fine, and that would not be considered to be a valid halacha. Or you can just do your entire process of separating out the mincha right next to mizbeach, and therefore not require not be required to do a halacha. You could essentially throw it right in the mizbeach. So, since halacha is not considered to be a essential avoda, it's kol avoda she'ena materes, any avoda that's not considered to be a matir, avoda chashuva hi lefagel olei b'fnei atzma. It is nevertheless considered to be an avoda chashuva. So this is a different term. It's considered to be a significant service, such that if a person has pigul intent during that service, it will then be considered to be pigul. That's how the Gemara wants to resolve this. It's not considered to be an additional matir, such that if a person had pigul intent during, let's say, one part of the halacha by the kmitza, as opposed to, and not intent by the halacha by levona, that will not be an issue of having pigul intent during one part of the matir, not another part of the matir, because it's not considered to be a matir, and therefore a person can have pigul intent for one of the components discreetly. Amarle Abaye. So let's just see Rashi for a second, because I don't know that I feel like I explained that well enough. So Rashi says, "Kol avoda she'ena materes," any avoda that's not materes, kigon halacha delo me'akva, like halacha that's not me'akev, the afshar lahoshit zeh mizeh lezeh. Rashi explains it again, like I said before, you can pass it from one coin to the other. Chashuva lefagel b'fnei atzma. It is nevertheless significant. It's an avoda, and it's chashuva lefagel b'fnei atzma. It's significant such that a person can have pigul just for that intent, just for that action alone. Why? Deleka lemeimar, we will no longer say about that action ad sheyifaga b'chol matir, that you need to have pigul intent throughout the entire matir. Dehalav matiru. It's not a matir anymore, and therefore it cannot be preempted by your intent by some other part of the matir. Ve'ein koach la'acheres la'akev shchitasa la'akev. There is not, you do not have the capacity for something else, essentially. If a person has intent during one part, it's not going to hold up this part, because this part is essentially discrete. Okay. You'll have to read the notes maybe to understand a little more. But anyway, okay, fine. So Gemara says, so Gemara asks, Amalei Abaye. So Abaye asks the following question: we know that the halacha is if a person shechts one of the kvasim for the shtei alechem. So if he shecht only one of the kvasim, the avoda she'ena matirta, shechting one of the animals is not matir. Is not a avoda that's matir. It's not being matir anything. The Gemara assumes it's not being matir anything. Why is it not being matir anything? Because the zurika of the carbon is what's going to be essentially matir the shtei alechem. So the actual shchita is not matir anything. The Gemara says that shchita is not a matir. Nevertheless, uplige, and you see what? That the Chachamim argue in that case as well. The Tanan, how do we know that the Chachamim argue in that case? The Gemara is going to quote the Mishnah that we said. Shachar echem min kavasim, a person shechting one of the kavasim. Lecho shtei chalas machar, to eat both of the loaves tomorrow. Hiktir echem min amazikim. This is again quoting our Mishnah. Hiktir echem min amazikim. If you offer up one of the spoonfuls, lecho shnei sedarim lemachar, to eat both of the sedarim, both of the piles of lechem apanim the following day. Rameir omer pigol. Rameir says that's a case of pigol. V'chayav will have kares, and you will be chayav kares, even though it's part of the matir. V'cham omer imbo kares acher faga b'chol matir. And the chacham say the halacha that it's considered to be a case where you're having pigol intent during part of the matir. But it's not. You're not having pigol intent for part of the matir. Those animals, if you go to the case of the animals, they're not really a matir. So therefore, according to Chachamim, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that should be, the Chachamim should agree in that case, because it's not a matir, it's not considered to be a matir, your pigul intent for part of it should be fine. So Amar Lei, so Gemara answers, Mi savras, lechem betaner kadosh. Do you think that do you hold that the lechem, that the bread betaner kadosh, that the bread becomes holy, becomes kodesh, sanctified in the oven? No. Shchitas kvasim kachale. The shchitas kvasim is effective in making the breads kodesh. So there is an effectiveness there is essentially, it's being matir them in the sense that it's making them kodesh, and therefore would fall into the general category of the machlokas between the Chacham and Rameir. Fine. And the Gemara continues. And the Gemara is essentially going to make an equation now. It makes them kodesh, and we know v'habala kadesh kibala hater. And anything that is any process that is mekadesh something, sanctifies something, is similar kibala hater dam. We consider it to be as if it's also being mater something. It's no different than if it were coming to be mater something. Just assume that that's the Gemara is just taking that as an assumption. And therefore, this is considered to be a matir. And once it's considered to be a matir, we'll have the machlokas between Rameir and the Chacham. Okay. Master Rav Simon Bar Ashi asked the following question. Achirim Omrim. There's an opinion that holds, this is talking about a case of Shechting the Carbon Pesach. Hiktim Mulim La'arelim. If a person had intent while he was doing the process of the Carbon Pesach, Hiktim Mulim La'arelim. If a person had intent for the people who have a bris milah, and he had intent to shecht for them, and then afterwards had intent to shecht for arelim, for people who are uncircumcised. Kasher, the carbon's kasher. Hiktim arelim l'mulim. However, if his initial intent was for the arelim, for the uncircumcised, and then later on for the mulim, for the people who were circumcised, pasal. But kaimalan, and the Gemara says over there that the machlokas is the bechatzi mater pili. The whole machlokas over there, it's not 100% important exactly what the case is talking about, but kamalam bechatzi mater pili, that there is a machlokas regarding that case, that the machlokas is by chatzi mater, that one opinion holds that it's a case of chatzi mater, and one opinion holds it's not a case of chatzi, that it's chatzi mater and therefore it's a problem, and the other holds that it doesn't matter, even if it's a chatzi mater, like our mayor holds over here, it's still possible. So Amar Lei, Mis, the Gemara wants to know over here. The carbon pesach is not being mater or anything. So why in that case would the issue of chatzi mater come up? If the carbon pesach is not a matir, it's not being mater something else. I mean, you're allowed to eat the carbon, but it's not being mater. It itself is not being mater something else. So why is that considered to be a case? Why does that fall into the category of this machlokas? The Gemara says, Mi savras dam betzavar behemar kadosh. Do you hold that the blood? Again, one second. I think the case is. So Gemara says, I'm sorry. Misavras dam betzavar behema kadosh. Do you hold that the blood in the neck of the animal is kadosh per se? No. Dam sakin mekachale. The blood is permitted by the knife. And the Gemara makes a similar equation. So there is an element of you being mater something. There's an element of you being mater something. That the knife is being mekadesh the carbon. And the Gemara makes the same equation. And anytime you're being mekadesh something, it's equivalent to your being mater something. V'abala kadesh kabala hater. And when you come to be makadesh something, it's similar to a case of where you're being mater something, and therefore again we understand why there would be a mechlokas in that case of chatzi mater versus not chatzi mater. Tashma. The Gemara continues. I'm sorry, we're a little bit late, but let's try and finish up. The Gemara says, when is the machlokas between Rameir and the Chachamim? In which case is the kmitza uvamatan kli v'hilach? In the cases of kmitza, in the case of placing them in the kli, and in the case of hiluch, of bringing it to the mizbeach. Now, we're talking about over here, is the machlok, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish are talking about, is the machlok between Rameir and the Chachamim in a case of hiluch? We said that in the Gemara. The Gemara said, you said hiluch is a case where there's a machlokas, because it's done by both. It's done by the case of the kmitza, and it's done by the levona as well. So Gemara says, my lav hiluch daktar. Are we not talking about the hiluch of haktar? Are we not talking about the hiluch of bringing it to the mizbeach to be maktir it? So Gemara says, no, hiluch the matan kli. No, it's talking about the hiluch bringing it to place it. It's not talking about one of the avodah of hiluch. It's talking about bringing it to the kli to place it in the kli. So Gemara says, ihachi. Then the order doesn't make sense. The Braisa's order doesn't make sense. B'matan kli uvehiluch. it should say matan kli. I'm sorry, b'matan kli v'hiluch. The Brisa says matan kli, you place it in the kli, and the halach of hiluch. But it should say hiluch, and then matan kli, because you're bringing it to the kli. If that's the case, then it should say you brought it, and then you put it in the klis. So Gemara says holokasha. The Gemara says no, that's not a strong question. Tini hachi. So we'll amend the Brisa to state that. That's what the Brisa meant to say, and that's how we should amend the Brisa. The Gemara says, the Gemara persists with its questioning. It says ba lo lehaktara. So the Gemara says you went to the Gemara's final case is you went to burn it. So if the Brisa essentially is not talking yet about the case of bringing it to the Mizbeach to burn it, we're missing a step. The Brisa continues and says, however, if you come to burn it, then there's no machlokas. Everyone will agree in that case. I'm sorry, there will be a machloka. There will be. 1 second. Yeah, there will be a machlokas in that case. So the Gemara says, why you're not burning it right away. You still have to do hiluch. You still have to bring it to the mizbeach. So the Gemara says it still doesn't. It should talk about the halacha of halacha in that case. Balo lahalacha. It should say that you then went to proceed with the komets to the mizbeach mibayle. So the Gemara says halakasha. That's not a question either. Kiven the halacha tzorach haktara. Since halacha is necessary in order to do haktara. Kiven the halacha tzorach the haktara kari le haktara. So the Mishnah just groups it essentially together with haktara. It says since halacha is going to be necessary to do haktara, it meant that obviously halacha is preceding that. Ella nasan sakomets b'shtika. So it says though that you placed the komets on the mizbeach. When the Gemara describes the case of the machlokas, it says you placed the komets on the mizbeach b'shtika, and then you did the second process b'machshava. So why doesn't it? If the machlokas is in the case of halacha also, why do you have to go to the case of aktara and say the machlokas is by aktara? The machlokas is even by halacha also. So it should just say holach mibayle. It should say that the person then brought it to the mizbeach, and he was silent for one part, had machshava for pigul for the other part. So Gemara says kasha. One more piece of the Gemara. Let's try. I'm sorry. One more piece. Hikter shumshim. If a person brought shumshim, a very small amount, he's offering up a very small amount of the kmitza, less than the kazayis. Hikter shumshim lechol shumshim. He brought a small amount, lechol shumshim, to eat a small amount, with intent to eat a small amount of the shirayim. So again, you're having pigul intent for the part that you're offering, and your pigul intent is to eat the remaining part that you're permitted to be eaten during the wrong time. So a person brought a small amount, less than the shir, to eat a small amount. So Gemara says, Ad shekala komets kula, and he did this. He continued to do this until he finished the entire komets. The avoda is to bring the entire komets. He did it basically piecemeal on the mizbeach. So Rav Chisda Rav Menuna Rav Sheshes. There's a 3 machlokas. Rav Chisda Rav Menuna Rav Sheshes. Chadam Rav Pigol. One says it's Pigol. Chadam Rav Pasal. One says it's Pasal, meaning it's only Pasal midrabanan and it's not Pigol and Chayv Kares. The Chadam Rav Kasher. One says it's totally Kasher. So the Gemara says Lema. Let's align the shitas with the shitas that we have. Let's do some puzzle fitting. So Lema Manda Amar Pigol. Let's say the Manda Amar holds that it's Pigol Kir Meir. That fits very nicely with the shita of Meir. That he had machshava, he had pigul intent for essentially partial processes, and therefore it'd be good pigul intent. Umanda or pasol, and the manda holds that's pasol. We'll hold the kachachamim since your pigul intent was not during an entire process. Gemara is going to ask questions in a minute, but since your pigul intent was not during the entire process, it's going to be pasol midrabanan. A pasol pigul midrabanan, and therefore pasol. You're not allowed to eat it. Umanda amar kasher, and the manda holds that's kasher. Kirebi is a third shita like. The Gemara says like Rebbe. Rebbe held that if you had 2 karbanos and if you had shechted half of one animal with the intent to eat half of the matir, and the other you shechted the other animal with intent to eat the other half. So Rebbe says we don't combine any of those. That pigul intent is totally invalid, and therefore everything becomes kosher according to Rebbe. So let's see how this works. The Gemara says now, Mimai, how do you know, how is that, maybe that's not, maybe the Gemara says you can't give that answer. We can't align the Shita so quickly with all these Shitas. Why? Dilma, perhaps Ad Kanlo Kamar Rameir. Rameir won't agree in this case. Maybe Rameir only held the Shita Hasam in the previous cases, El Dechishu B'Shiril, when his machshav intent was with the proper shir, with the proper amount, with the requisite amount of a kometz, a kazayas at least. Abal Hacha Dulochishu B'Shiril, where your pigul intent was not with the full shir, perhaps Rameir would agree that it's not a valid pigul intent, and therefore it would not be pigul midah oraisa. And Chacham argue on Rameir Hasam only in a case El Dul Chishav Bei Bekule, where your pigul, again we said that according to Chachamim, your pigul has to be through the entire matir. So even though we split everything up here, at the end of the day, your pigul intent is through the entire matir. Dul Chishav Bei Bekule, where your machshava, where your pigul intent is not through or does not include all of the processes. Here, your pigul intent does include all the processes. But so therefore the Chachamim might not argue in this case. Where your pigul intent was throughout everything, perhaps the Chachamim would agree. So the Chachamim will agree that this case perhaps is a case of pigul. And Rebbe does not argue only in the case Hasam El Dulahadr Malya Me'osa Avoda. When a person doesn't, then only when a person essentially switches to another avoda and completes the shir in another avoda. But here, aval hacha dehadar malya meos avoda, where a person goes back essentially to the same avoda and is completing the shir from the same process, perhaps Rabbi Hachanami de Pasel, Rabbi will agree that is considered to be a good case of pigul. So the Gemara says, so Gemara answers that doesn't work. So how do we understand then this whole machlokas? Ella mandamar pigul divrei kol. Manda Amar Pasal Divrei Kol. Manda Amar Kasher Pasal Divrei Kol. Manda Amar Kasher Divrei Kol. All of these shitas, when they stated their halacha, they were stating them universally. They for whatever reason, and the Gemara is going to explain in a second, they did not fall into this machlokas between Meir and Chachamim and Rebbe. How do they understand it? The Gemara is going to say quickly. So the Gemara says, Mandam or Pigol, Divrei Kol, according to the Shita that holds that Pigol, everyone agrees that it's a case of Pigol. Kasavar, he holds Derech Achila Bekach, V'derech Haktar Bekach. It is a way of eating and a way of burning in these small amounts, and therefore, since it is a normative way of eating and a normative way of offering up a carbon, so it will be considered to be a proper Pigol Machshava. It will be a proper haktara, and therefore will be considered to be a good pigul intent, and therefore everyone will agree it's like a regular case of pigul, where a person did all of the matir and offered it up with a pigul intent, and it will be pasal. Umanda Amar pasal divrei kol, according to the Manda Amar holds that it's pasal according to everyone. Kasavar derech achila bekach, it is the way to eat small amounts like that. Ve'ein derech haktar bekach, however, it's not the proper way of offering up the carbon that way, so therefore it's essentially a carbon mincha. But your avoda of haktara is not valid. V'havila ki mincha shelo huktara. It's like a carbon mincha that wasn't offered, that there was no haktara done for the carbon. You didn't take off a kmitza and do haktara. The haktara was not meaningful, and therefore it's possible. You're not allowed to eat it. If a mincha was not offered, you didn't do haktara, it's possible to eat that carbon mincha. Umanda Amar kasher, and according to the Manda Amar that holds that it is kasher, that essentially your pigul intent was meaningless. Kasher divrei akol kasavar derech haktar bekach. It is the proper way of doing haktara. Ve'ein derech achila bekach, and it is not the way of eating in these small amounts. And if you look at the Rashi says v'lo pasal machshavta, and therefore your machshava did not pasal it, because it's not your intent to eat a small amount. Your intent to eat the small amount, let's say in the wrong time or the wrong place, is meaningless. That's not considered to be eating. So your pigul intent is invalid, and since your pigul intent is invalid, it's like you're doing haktara for in the proper way, and therefore everything's going to be kasher.